Despite offers to join a bottom half championship podcast, we are back with you once again with a new season of the Oh No 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 podcast. It might only be the 6th of July, but summer is officially over, and I for one could not be happier. I am Duncan Cameron, and joining me tonight to cover the pre-season friendlies and everything else that's happened in the last couple of weeks, I am delighted to have Allan Douglas Munn. First of all, how are you, Allan?
I'm really good, mate, yeah. None of that summer nonsense. Let's get back to the rain and misery. And I'm happily sporting my Rovers clearance sale polo shirt as well. All good.
Excellent. You can get yourself in a tweet at the end of the year for buying the most discounted gear at the Rover shop.
I don't know.
We've got
player-worn shorts by somebody that none of us were actually able to figure out who they were. That was the winner so far, I think.
It's quite good that I like the every now and again in the group chat someone pops up like a pair of shorts from eBay from 2004. It's like who wore number 19 in 2004? Great. 7 of us hunting through archives to try and work out. It turns out don't have squad numbers.
For Robbie to come along and just know the answer.
We've got Scott Fleming as well. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, I'm really good. As you say, it's now the first couple of weeks with the summer, you're kind of glad that you get like just 2 or 3 weeks of nothing. And then you get to that sort of last week of May, you start going, oh, we kind of need something going on because it's been 3 weeks in hand. And then again, you go through, you don't mind if you've got like holidays or whatever. And then, and then the league fixtures come out and then you go, right, now we just want the league to be here because they've been announced. But there's still... the players have got to get up to speed and stuff like that. So, no, it's been good to have the games back again and stuff like that, and then also just other things going on within the club as well. But hopefully next weekend we'll get more of a proper feel that the season has begun.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really don't care for or care about friendlies, which I totally understand and is totally fine. I feel like I really care about 2 friendlies. Like that's my limit. So after the summer, I'm just desperate to get and watch some football. And once I've seen 2, I'm like, all right, this is shit. Can we get back to real football, please? And finally, for tonight, we've got Ali Pilmer as well. How are you, Ali?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, delighted to be back, and it's nice to get back to the pre-season friendlies. I can do something else other than avoid the Club World Cup.
Yeah,
that's still going.
That's what I was going to say. I have absolutely no idea what's happening with the Club World Cup. It's possibly players are just perishing in the heat at this point.
I think somebody's leg fell off or something yesterday. That's all I know. I don't actually know what happened. Like, I'm probably making light of what was a very serious injury to a Bayern Munich player, I think, maybe. But I don't actually know the details.
I've got absolutely no idea. I suspect that'll be the last we hear of the Club World Cup tonight, but we do have... I think it's going to be a bit of a whirlwind as we try and run through everything that's happened since the last episode that we put out, which was only the 22nd of June. It wasn't a long time ago, but we've got 3 games, we've got a couple of signings, we've got new kit, and we've got just a little bit of mischief to look back on as well. But let's start at the beginning. So I think the first thing really that happened since that last episode was the first of the friendlies. So Saturday, 28th, Rovers went to Prestonfield to play Linlithgow Rose. 2-1 to the Rose. Final score, Lewis Vaughan gave the Rovers the lead in the first half. But after a raft of substitutes, I think it's fair to say that the Rovers lost their shape a little bit in the latter stages. And the Rose managed to grab a couple of goals to give them the win. Allan, what was your overall impressions of that game?
I think I go into these games as much as like you. It's like I just want to see some football, so I get excited about the first pre-season friendly, probably the first home one, and then after that, it's like, it's a run around. I don't actually care if it's behind closed doors. Really, just there. Get fitter. I enjoyed the day out. I thought it's always good to see some of the new signings in action, kind of get a feel for them. I thought there was some signs that Rowe and Chin looked like they could maybe link up down that right hand side. You've obviously I'm going to throw out our first caveat of the new season. You obviously have to kind of think about the level of opposition. But I think on the whole, first half, I thought we did really well. Start the second half pretty well. I thought their trialist goalie did his chances at a deal no harm at all. He looked really decent. But I thought we were completely in control at the back, as you would expect from having our first choice back three out in there. They just looked like they were kind of picking up where they'd left off last season, and there was a lot of encouraging signs until we basically decided we were going to take all the first team off and throw on a bunch of teenagers who. And I don't want this to seem that I'm being critical of them because they were thrown in at the deep end altogether with probably not that much experience even around them anymore. I don't necessarily think it was wrong of Robson to do that. I think it was more of a, if we're going to do that to you, let's do it against Linlithgow Rose in the first pre-season friendly when it's not really going to do any harm, because he backs himself to then kind of, if they're feeling a bit down after having a bad game, he'll back himself to go in and kind of put his arm around them and say, don't worry about it, guys, it's just a friendly. So I think it did what it needed to do. He got a look at some of the new guys in a match environment and they got a bit of running in the legs. And we got to see Josh Mullen at left wing back,
Yeah, not for the last time. Ali, were you concerned in any sense? Can you shrug off a loss to Linlithgow Rose nice and easily?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit annoyed to see us essentially chuck it away, but I think that, to be fair to Linlithgow Rose, they were pretty well organised, and when we pulled off especially Brown and Matthews, we lost that shape completely in the middle when the young lads came on, and it probably just shows you that if you're like Linlithgow Rose and you're working hard, the players are up to speed in the game, they've got a good system, the young lads just kind of got ran over a bit, so I wouldn't put too much weight on it at all. I was more encouraged by the fact that the likes of Rowe and Chin and the new signings looked decent enough, and that we had good spells, and like Robson said in his post-match interview, he probably should have scored a few more goals. I mean, Brown, I think, was it hit the bar early in the second half? If that goes in, I don't think the list will always come back. And can't make those kind of excuses if it's like a league game or a competitive game. But for a friendly, I think it's fine. I wasn't coming out of there panicking for the season ahead. Put it that way.
Yeah. I was just saying, it's just like really not bothered in the slightest. It's just, especially with it being the first friendly as well. Like, I think we'll come on to the game in detail later on. But I think if you look at the game yesterday against Falkirk, all right, Robson made 4 subs rather than 3. But other than that, it was kind of like a league game in the sense that it was the strongest team available to him, and he played them for 80 minutes before he made any changes. Whereas that first game against Linlithgow was very different, where, relatively early, relatively soon into the second half, he basically made all of his subs. So clearly with that kind of fitness in mind. So, I actually thought the kind of biggest issue with that was the fact that we didn't really have a forward, a striker on the park after we made those subs, and I think that it's very difficult to keep any kind of shape when you've not really got any ability to retain the ball. And then, I don't know, it seemed like, you mentioned Josh Mullen playing at left wing back, he seemed to also be playing holding midfield for the last kind of 10 minutes. Just determination to get him to do absolutely everything at least once.
Which he'll do. He'll do it for us. He'll play wherever he's asked to play. Like most professionals will, to be fair.
Yeah. And I think, Linlithgow had 2 chances and they both went in, and that's completely fine. But, ultimately it doesn't make any difference, really. If that game finishes 3-0, 3 each, or 3-0 the other way, it's fine. First game is not what it's about.
Yeah, Les, you're not allowed to put that in as your first goal conceded from a corner of the 25-26 season, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Scott, what were your main kind of takeaways from that first game?
Yeah, I think the lads have kind of covered most of it. I didn't catch the game live because I was busy that weekend with work and stuff, but I watched the highlights on the Sunday after it, and I kind of went in going, kind of going by what you guys had been saying, like in the group chat, and what my dad and other folk were saying that had maybe seen the game or whatever. But and as you say, like pre-season, especially the first game, no matter what level you're playing against, like everybody's going to have moments where they're going to be just trying to get fitness, or they're just trying to get their sort of. They'd only been back literally a week, and whether or not they'd even really had like the footballs out that much, I don't know. Because I mean, the first couple of days it sounded like it was literally just fitness testing as well. So it wouldn't have surprised me if they basically didn't do any football really until like the Thursday or the Friday before the game. But you just hope for obviously getting a progression game by game. But that one, and when I watched the highlights, I couldn't really argue what Barry Robson said in terms of. I think I could easily have seen us scoring 3 or 4 that day, going by the chances we missed. I mean, I think Vaughan had a couple of chances other than the one that he scored. And then obviously Bruni had that belter that he hit off the bar. And then, Linlithgow score a couple of goals after we bring on a lot of young lads. But at the same time, and we also changed the keeper as well, who had just been also young, but also making his debut. So there was a lot of things going on. But I also... I think the difference is if you're losing 2-1 to Linlithgow in November in the third round of the Scottish Cup, that's a different story. But to lose to them in the end of June at the start of a new season, I'm not overly worried about it at all.
And to be fair, that was the feeling I got in the ground as well. There wasn't one guy kind of lost his rag at Dylan Easton at one point for not playing in Ethan Drysdale, and it was that where kind of everybody, including Dylan Easton, was like, that seems like an overreaction to this. I don't think
I remember thinking, if he leaves because of this,
like he should have played the pass, but also I don't know, it seemed fine. And same at full time, nobody seemed remotely arsed. So it was one of these where you kind of brace yourself a little bit, like somebody's going to be losing the heat over this. But actually, I never really saw it. A rare bit of perspective, which is always nice to see. So I say that was the first game. We'll go through the kind of events of the last few weeks, kind of chronologically. So we'll get to the second game in a second. But before that, what we had was a couple of announcements, bits of news, I suppose, on the Tuesday. So first of all, middle of the afternoon, we get the new kit. Now, obviously, the reason that people listen to this podcast is for our sort of sartorial opinions. Well turned out bunch that we are. Scott, we'll start with you on this one. New kit, you big fan?
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's kind of what you want for, especially a home kit. It's one that is your sort of traditional sort of like club colours, and it's just a nice clean kit. Whereas like some teams you'll see, they'll kind of try and throw something in it to make it like spark, or they'll try and do something to jazz it up a little bit. But I think just going with a nice navy blue, nice and clean. I like the fact that they've added obviously the sort of the collar like on this one. I think it's a nice touch to it as well. And also I suppose for a little mention for the sponsor is that Audio Motion, who have came in the last 2 seasons, I think, really, that they've been involved with the club. It's good for them as well that they've managed to basically go from different parts of the stadium or the kit, and now we're actually on the front of the kit. And I mean, I met the guy for Audio Motion last year after when I won that Euros prediction thing last year.
Of course, and
I had a chat with him for a good 10 minutes or so before doing photos and whatever for the website. But it was he seemed like a really nice guy, and he's proper enthusiastic as well. Like, and he's mad about the Rovers, which is also a good thing. So no, I'm glad for them that they've managed to get onto the front of the kit as well. But yeah, as I say, the kit itself was there was nothing really to argue about it at all. I thought it was really a really nice kit.
I'd forgotten about that thing that you played. I was like, Scott's really keen on Audio Emotion here. So, right enough, there's a good reason for that. Alan, what were your thoughts?
I really like it as well. Yeah, it's as Scott said, it's not too busy. It's not too. It's it's not just plain blue. There is kind of pattern in the kind of in the material, if you like, which I like. It's just a really kind of clean, kind of nice looking classic Rovers kit. I found myself almost agreeing with the crowd without thinking about it before. It's like, nah, it should be white shorts. See, when I see it all together with the sock, I actually like it with the blue shorts. I also really like the socks. I think the socks with the kind of white stripes on them are really cool. Not that I'm a fashionable person in any way, shape or form, so my opinion is really irrelevant other than to me. But no, I really like it. Yeah. I shall be parting with some of my hard-earned money for that, and probably even more of it to get the full bloody whole kit for my son for his birthday in a couple of weeks' time. So
it's always, I think, remarkable to me how well most kits end up coming out looking when you think of like the kind of stereotypical person at a football club who must end up being involved in the design process.
Also, just going actually, I meant to note. Not bothered at all that it's gone up to 45 to 50 quid. It's been 45 quid for years and years. The costs must have gone up. I have no problem at all with the club passing on a wee bit of that to us.
It's the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd have to go far to find football clubs charging extortionate amounts of money for what's effectively the same bits of material. The announcement video, this one came from is it Shambolics or the Shambolics? I don't want to get that wrong. I think just Shambolics.
Shambolics, yeah.
Yeah. Nicely done though, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's funnily enough, we knew, myself and Scott knew that the Shambolics were doing a wee thing for it because we're very good friends with Scott Thompson, who's the bass player in the Shams. He's a massive Rovers fan. But yeah, it was really well done with Darren and the other lad, Darren Forbes and the other lad. And I really like how the club are leaning into that, sort of using the local music scene and producing a nice little package and using it to like advertise the top and that. So no, it's nice. It's a good song too.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, I think it was the same kind of design team. I'm not quite sure what you call them, consultancy, who certainly did last season's season ticket stuff as well. And I think again, it shows the value of actually, obviously somebody at the football club, they're putting their hands in their pockets to do these kind of things. But I think the return on the investment, it's compared to your alternative, which would just be a photo appears of two guys in a new jersey.
Yeah.
You get that little bit of buzz and the whole kind of package around it. Whether that translates to extra jerseys sold, I don't know, but overall, you just get that much bigger, more professional feel to the whole thing. And
the completely predictable lack of patience with fans saying, "Oh, can we just get a picture of it so I can see it with somebody without a jacket on?" It's like,
it's like a picture of it, that same day when we released that, it was not long after I think Newcastle had released their kit, and it was a similar sort of thing where they've done it, as you say, it's like a professional thing where they've done it where like different parts of Newcastle there's like folk walking about, but they're all then congregating into a pub with the players, fans and famous like supporters that are either musicians or whatever of Newcastle, and it's the same sort of vibe as well. It just makes makes fans, I suppose, think that it's a more official thing, like you say, and it's just a cool thing to do rather than, as you say, like just said player, like the captain or whatever, just standing at the dugout with the new top on, which is
so you're basically saying Newcastle
what some people do, but yeah.
I just thought that was the full kit, Alan. I thought everybody was going to have to wear a trench coat and sunglasses.
Indoors,
yeah. But yeah, it's really good. It's good stuff all round. I think that's the one thing you don't want is for your home kit to be a disaster. You're going to have to see it so often. And I think, a lot of the time, we've talked about this a lot in various different guises, but I think like Stockholm Syndrome takes care of it for you quite a lot. Where you see a new kit, and even if your initial reaction isn't great, you kind of get used to it anyway. But
I'm just glad to see they're actually releasing the song as well. I'm going to put on the day that they're releasing it, because every single time I play it at Starks Park, because obviously I think Graham sent it to me after the thing before the Celtic game. So every time I played it, they're like, "Oh, where can I get that?" I was like, well, "I'm sure they'll release it, but just in case they're going to, I didn't really want to send it to you because it's not really mine to send." So thankfully, it's going to. I'm assuming it'll be going on Spotify and stuff, so people can actually listen to it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure we'll stick links in the podcast description as and when it's available as well. So that was the first kind of piece of news on that Tuesday, and then also very short order before kickoff, we also got an announcement of a new signing as well. This one had been teased for a little while, including via the movement of the wider dairy property market. But we did. So we had a fair inkling that Paul McMullan was coming back to Scotland, and indeed, having there been whispers that he'd been training with us, it was indeed Paul McMullan who's with us. Ali, overall impressions or immediate impressions with Paul McMullan?
I'm really happy with the signing, actually. I think it's a cracking signing. I think when I was really disappointed when Aidan Connolly left, and I thought we were kind of that sort of kind of crafty wide player role that he'd sort of perfected. I feel like we were really missing that, and also a sort of effective sort of forward/winger that we were missing in Jamie Gullen. That's a big gap in the squad with those two guys going, and I think McMullan fills it perfectly. He looks like he's got. Well, he's not afraid to get stuck in, put it that way. He's played at a decent level. I think he said at last 3 times he's been in the league, he's got promoted out of it, so that's a pretty good record. Yeah, I think it's good, and I thought actually, we'll come on to it, but I thought in his first game for us at Falkirk, he was linking up really well early doors, so yeah, I'm quite excited by it. I think it's a good signing.
Yeah, he looks like he's just got all the... I mean, we know he's got the quality to play at this level. As you said, he's won this division. I think he's won it 3 times. And there's not too many guys in that bracket this season, this window, where you've got kind of proven championship quality. I don't know if it's just recency bias, but it just seems like there's not too many of those guys going around. And the ones who were released by us. So, like, we let go Liam Dick, Ewan Murray, Aidan Connolly. There's not a huge number of other guys in that same bracket who'd left, a team around us, or even a team, at the bottom end of the Premiership, who were kind of available.
More Joe Chalmers slander. It's shocking.
I said teams around us.
Well, that's true. I know these bottom half ones.
But the 2 that were kind of, I think, mooted, that maybe weren't immediately kind of local, was Dom Thomas and then Paul McMullan. And obviously Dom Thomas has gone to Ayr. I think kind of quality-wise, I think they're very, very similar. You would never sign both. If you've got one of them, you're not necessarily then also need the other one. But very good that we're able to pick up a player of his quality. Because I think that's where the likes of, like, to pick on a few, I think like Morton, Arbroath, Airdrie, struggling to find players of that kind of quality. So certainly I'm very pleased with it. Scott, what are your thoughts on Paul McMullan?
Yeah, just like what Ali says, it was a very solid signing for this level. Somebody that knows the division really well, played in it many times with different teams as well. And I think the fact that Barry Robson's also came in, obviously in January, had a look at the squad for 6 months, and probably has, within 3 months, decided what he needs for next season as well. Because I know we went on that really good run at the end of the season, but at the same time, I think we were all saying it's going to be very unlikely that we're making the playoffs. It almost transpired that we did make them, but that was just because of a ridiculous run, to be fair. But so he would have already been putting plans in with John Potter and all that lot, and his scouts and stuff, to be saying, right, this is the sort of player I'm wanting, go and find them for me, basically. And then they've probably came down to 5 players, or what Rory was saying in his interview was basically saying like how they go about scouting players, and it like comes down to like a final couple of guys, and then Barry Robson and or John Potter go and speak to these players and agents. But in terms of Paul McMullan, I think I know we will, as Ali said, speak about it later, but he looks like somebody that a bit of pace that we possibly weren't getting for Aidan Connolly, but I think you're still going to get the same quality as you got on the ball as Aidan Connolly, because although they're one's left-footed, one's right-footed, I think Paul McMullan gives you that directness. Like Aidan Connolly was always running at his defender, he just necessarily couldn't take him on that much because it was like, well, I've not really got the pace, but what I can do is cut inside and whip it in the top corner instead. But whereas I think McMullan's a bit more tricky and can actually use his pace to beat defenders, whereas Connolly couldn't. But other than that, I think as you say, Dom Thomas is possibly the only one that you were going, well, if we're missing out on him, we need to go and get somebody of a similar standard, and that's somebody that is of a similar standard. So, and as you say, the rest of the division are struggling. So I can't say that anybody would have been complaining. I didn't see anybody complaining really of the signing, and even when it was linked that he was coming to us, because I mean the other clubs that were linked to him were clubs that are going to be fighting with us for the top 4. It was St Johnstone and Ayr, was it?
Yes.
And yet Ayr had just signed Dom Thomas. It was like, well, it's hardly likely he's going to go to Ayr. Like, but yeah. So no, I'm really happy that we've managed to get him, and on a 2-year deal. It's not just a 1 year as well.
Yeah, it's a good point actually about the kind of versatility, because obviously we all know what you mean about Aidan Connolly, where you kind of know what he's going to do. He's very, very good at it, but yeah, when he squares up his fullback, he's only ever going to come inside. He's never going to run into the line. Whereas Paul McMullan, I think, is much more versatile than that, and I think we probably will see him both in the middle and out wide at different times, doing different jobs, which is a good weapon to have, definitely. Allan, anything to disagree with in there?
No, the only other kind of point I was going to make is to get a guy in with that kind of experience, and he's only 29. You know, normally you're picking up a guy like that and they're maybe 33, 34, or they've gone up a level and they've not been getting a game and they've been sat on the bench for a half a season, and you're bringing them in. Whereas a guy who's, he's been playing every week, I don't know the level of the Northern Ireland Premier League. I genuinely don't. They seem to be throwing a bit of money about. There's some good players there. But, he's been playing every week at a decent level, and he's still only 29. He definitely offers something. And I've seen suggestions that him and Sean Byrne link up very well together when they were at Dundee. So, that might kind of bring something there as well. There's lots of wee kind of different angles looking at it. I think it's just a very, very good signing. He's I would say a very good player to add to the squad, but I think he is going to almost certainly play most weeks. He's that kind of. If we can get to the stage where we're leaving a player that has quality on the bench, then we're doing all right, I think. So.
Just one very brief thing there. I think the people of Derry would want us to clarify that Derry City play in the League of Ireland, which is the Republic of Ireland's league, not the Northern Ireland League. You just think it's...
Leave me to it, Duncan. I can feel my wife. On that point, though, I was going to say, the fact that he's come from the League of Ireland, they play the February to October season. So another advantage of picking McMullan up is that he's ready to go. Like they're about 23 games into their season, and he's played the lion's share of that. So it's not as if you're picking up a guy that you've got to try and then get his fitness up to speed. He's basically match fit now, which is a huge advantage.
Yeah, he played a league game last Friday night. Got what I think the kids are calling a pre-assist. Which is that he played a very short pass to someone and then put in a really good cross for Danny Mullen. But we did then on an action-packed Tuesday. We got a kit, we got a player, and we got a game as well. Slightly different tone to this one from the defeat on the Saturday, as Rovers beat Alloa 4-1. Not a full-strength Alloa side by any means, but still a very good performance. Goals from Lewis Vaughan, Richard Chin, Jay Rowe, and Josh Mullen. The late consolation from an Alloa trialist. Alan, give me your... I think it's exactly the same question I asked you about the first game, but give me your impressions on this one as well, please.
A really good run out. A bit more... kind of... I think we got more of an idea how some of the kind of players will fit into the system. I thought Jay Rowe, when he came on, looked really decent. I thought Chen had a good game as well, put himself about a bit, fully running. You start to see you could see a bit of the pace from him there. Despite what certain posters on certain football message boards say, I thought Kai Montague had a cracking game.
Definitely.
The way when he was clean through, to have the awareness to square that ball to Lewis Vaughan and find him, it was basically in Vaughan's run. He didn't have to do anything; he just ran onto it and tapped it in. I thought there was an awful lot of positives there. I mean, I did obviously let Robbie down by failing to kind of compete with the Montrose announcer for last season's enthusiastic pre-season friendly announcing. So I'll have to live with my shame for that. But no, it was a very useful exercise and some really good, well taken goals. And more importantly, just to see, I know it's pre-season friendlies, but to see Lewis Vaughan consistently scoring goals, that's something that should have Rovers fans very, very excited. And without wanting to come across, go over the score a little bit because of who we've been playing against, I think Championship defenders will be a wee bit worried about the thought of a fully fit and firing Lewis Vaughan.
Yes, and with good reason, definitely. Scott, well, we were very much sticking to the line that we don't care about the results in friendlies because we get beat by Lithgow Rose. But if you have to play friendlies, scoring 4 goals in one is the way to go about it. What did you think to this one?
Yeah, I think for the most part anyway, it just looked like a side that, again, have had an extra few days together on the training ground. They've already played a game together, so you can see the cohesion starting to sort of bed in. And I think Barry Robson would have been really happy with the outcome, of everything. We actually took our chances. We still actually missed a fair few in the first half, especially. But, I mean, again, if we said we could have scored 6, we definitely could have scored 6 on that game. But I think any time that you score 4, you're going to be happy. And again, it's good to just get minutes into players' legs. It was good that we started with the likes of Gibson and Montague as well, because these guys are now... They were here last season, but at the end of the day, they didn't really play an awful lot of games. They got some minutes, but it was good that they got a proper run out. And I mean, Montague played the full game. Gibson, unfortunately, got picked up a knock and obviously couldn't play the Falkirk game, but hopefully he's not going to be out too long because guys like Gibson, I thought he actually played really well in that first half. I didn't see a lot of folk mentioning it because I suppose it's only really 45 minutes that he played, but I thought he was really looking dangerous in terms of being a proper wing-back, which is that being direct, offering your sort of right-sided midfielder an option to pass out wide to you and your right-sided centre-half, and then whipping crosses into the box. I know that Lewis Vaughan isn't exactly massive as a target to be aiming at, but at least if you can fire a few lower ones in that he can maybe get on the end of, then I think that's... And then you had the boy Chin as well, who's sort of going from the wing inside and then coming back out again. So no, I thought Gibson played well, and then I also didn't really understand why there was any sort of slander towards Kai in terms of his performance, because that first goal was, I know it was a really actually well timed run for him, because the Alloa line are trying to catch us offside, and then it's a brilliant ball through to him, which he's managed to do. What you want your striker to be doing is actually making sure. The amount of times we've seen like Mark Stewart not looking at the guy along the line and being caught offside 9 times a game, like that's what you want your centre forward to be doing. And Kai's done that brilliantly, and very unselfish to give it to Lewis Vaughan as well. And yeah, Vaughan scoring.
You're right to highlight the ball for Gibson through to him. Actually, it was a really nice pass.
It was a really nice pass, and then also good to see then J-Ro come on in the second half and then scoring, because again, when we signed him, it looked like, or the way that I looked at it from his highlight reel on YouTube and the club's highlight reel of him, it looked like a very much a more athletic and stronger version of Regan Tumlety. Going by it, the fact that he could score goals, he was up and down, and it looks like he's pretty decent in the air as well, which is what we've not really had from a right-sided, like a right back for a long time now. So to have that on top of the back three that we've got already is really good. And then that fourth goal was an absolute belter. But I feel like Josh Mullen scores only belters in pre-season. Did he not do that at Linlithgow the other season as well? Scored an absolute belter, a half volley. So it's like, if he could do it during the season, brilliant. Like, but overall, you couldn't really complain with that game at all, and you can only beat what's in front of you as well.
So it's the only thing I can think that there was any kind of criticism, actually I don't agree with. The only reason I can think anyone was labelling any kind of criticism towards Kai Montague was a couple of times in the first half he kind of had the chance to shoot but didn't. But that's exactly where the goal comes from. And like, if I'm Lewis Vaughan's teammate, I'm going to pass to him as well. Like, you've got a guy who's got that much quality and that much finishing ability, then yeah, definitely try and find them. Like, that just makes sense to me. I thought he was excellent. I was really, really surprised there was any kind of comment.
He snapped a couple of shots, I think, because I think he's just desperate to score. I think he's desperate to get them, which is fair enough.
Ali, any kind of standouts, anyone in particular you want to kind of pick up from that game?
So I like the improvement from Richard Chin on the first game. Like at Linlithgow, he was trying really hard, but to be fair to him, it's a hard position to come into that sort of like attacking wide player role, and you're trying to like. He's also got the guy behind him. Rowe is also new. So and then he's watching Dylan Easton, and Dylan Easton's going left and right, and trying to figure out when the ball's coming. I thought going into the Alloa game, the Alloa were quite poor, a lot poorer than I thought they'd be, and they were very static. And it kind of gave Chin a bit more room to kind of get a feel for it, and he was linking up quite well. Wasn't afraid to have a shot at goal, got a goal. So yeah, I was sort of looking to see how he would do kind of at home in front of the home crowd and respond to that and more minutes in his legs. So I thought he looked decent. He's very raw. Like that's what Robson described him as in the interviews, and you can kind of see it. Like he's got a heavy touch as well sometimes. But yeah, if he continues to improve, then I think he should hopefully be a good asset for us.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Actually, against Linlithgow, I thought he did really well, and he had a couple of things that he did a couple of really nice turns where he just spun his man completely. But I almost had a sort of like a weird feeling where I was like, that's almost been too easy for you. Like, I don't think you'd get away with that at a higher level. And almost like, should you be trying that if you're not going to get away with it? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it was almost like he was kind of getting away with what could have actually been a little bit naive, but he was getting away with it. So I'm the same as you. I was much more sort of reassured actually watching him against Alloa because he just looked more comfortable and like the things that he was doing was he was making the right choices, he was doing the right things. And, just sometimes I think that can be a little bit of like lulled into a false sense of security almost. You go to a new team in a different country, and then your first game is a team that's levels below. And I know they beat us, but like is levels below. But then, as actually against Allan, I thought he did very, very well, and I was kind of reassured by that. And yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, as I say, the result really doesn't matter at all. But it was a better performance overall, and it was a slightly more kind of mixed team as well. A couple of the younger guys starting. As you say, Scott, it's a shame that Lewis Gibson has picked up that knock from that one because I wonder if we'll see him basically as the kind of backup right wing back. Because to an extent last season, we were always kind of bodging that position anyway. But now that we're going to have J Rowe as a dedicated right wing back, if he's missing for a game because he's suspended, because he's injured, you maybe want someone who's much more closely matched to his style of play, and I think that's where Gibson could come in. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, or whether it's a case that Lewis Gibson continues to just get 5 or 10 minutes in a different position, being asked to do a different thing kind of every time we see him. Which
he also
is
played
obviously
as a wing back at Queen of the South the most of these games that he played there, and I mean, I know he got flung in at 16-year-old or whatever when his dad was manager, but like he was clearly used because he's crossing ability and he's so two-footed as well, it's the confidence he's got on both feet, which I really like. Like, you could use him as a left wing back as well because he's so confident on his left foot and he's got the pace to take on players as well. So, I mean, you could use him whether even Lewis Stevenson got injured or, well, he currently is still injured. So, I wouldn't be against. I know that we've used Josh Mullen there a couple of times in pre-season, but if Stevenson wasn't even fit enough to play next weekend, I'd be happy enough if Lewis Gibson started there.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I would be exactly the same. Right, let's leave the Alloa game there and let's go to it was Thursday the 3rd of July. I think it possibly the 2nd or the 3rd, and the club statement. Ooh, club statement. Not what you want. Club statement out of the blue. Bad news bears. But as it turns out, just a big bam up. Because actually, the club statement, once you clicked into it, club statement of a really kind of morose looking Dylan Easton as well as the photo. Just perfectly done. A contract extension for Dylan Easton. And not a contract extension that happened in a vacuum. As I think had been very widely rumoured and discussed, there had been, to some degree, a pursuit from our friends and neighbours at East End Park. They had spent at least part of the summer making, by the sounds of it, 2 different bids, but I mean, how much talking went around that, in an attempt to prize Dylan Easton away, and the state was announcing that he'd signed a 2-year contract extension to put that to bed. So, I mean, we'll get to the actual, the announcement that removed all the doubt soon enough, but Ali, in terms of the speculation and the rumour and you get umpteen different people all purporting to have different levels of kind of solid sources. Were you growing concerned? Were you refusing to kind of believe these rumours? Where were you prior to this announcement?
To be honest, part of me thinks it was by design from the Pars to try and unsettle us a bit, put in a couple of bids, throw a cat amongst the pigeons, see how we reacted to it. It seemed to be their tactic, and then maybe come back again with like an incrementally greater amount and see if we'd bite. I was more worried that, I mean, people were saying that they were offering Easton multiples of his salary or whatever and quote-unquote life-changing money. I was more concerned that at 31 years of age and with a finite football career, he might decide it was best for his family to take it, rather than us actually accept. Like the Pars would have had to absolutely blow us out of the water, I think, for us to accept an offer and piss off our own fan base, for want of a better way of putting it. So I was a wee bit concerned that it would be too good for Easton to turn down rather than the Rovers. And the club absolutely got me when they put out that club statement. I had about 30 seconds of despair until I actually opened it and went beyond the headline.
Yeah, it's one that actually I think, not to kind of rake over the coals of old news, but I think the varying episodes of the Sam Stanton saga, actually that gave me a little bit of kind of reassurance. Because I think without that, or in a previous, iteration, maybe, I would have been more worried about, as you say, there's, out with the official channels, Dylan Easton is made aware that the wages on offer would be extortionate, and then he makes it very clear, like, listen, I want to go, and I will not, affect it. I won't be happy if you don't accept this or whatever. And then you're over a barrel, and you're kind of negotiating to try and get the best you can. But that, as the Rovers made very clear that they wouldn't be easily played in that manner. So I was quite kind of reassured on that point. I also, it's never kind of struck me that Dylan Easton's that kind of guy, but I think we all have our price. That there's amounts of money that I think would make anybody behave like that if it came to it. And it was the kind of repetition of the rumour that got to me, because it seemed to go in like peaks and troughs. Like every 3 or 4 days it would come back again, and it would be slightly different. And it was enough different people had mentioned it with like just enough confidence that, having dismissed it the second or third time, the fourth time, I was like, there might actually be something in this. This seems to be like it's not just silly season. Scott, for you, was it something that you were paying attention to as the summer progressed?
I was kind of in a similar boat to yourself in terms of definitely the first time I heard it, I was like, nah, I think this is just Pars fans just trying to bam us up sort of thing. And then the second time I'd heard it, I heard it from a mate of mine who is actually a Pars fan, and he kind of usually is quite in the know with a lot of stuff with Pars rumours. And he says that was the second time was the first of him hearing it. So I thought, right, maybe there is actually them just trying to sort of put a feeler out and see, is this going to be possible? And then the third time I was like, right, actually, they are trying to be serious, I think, about this. And as Ali said as well, I think it was to try and upset us a bit, and also try and get arguably one of the best players in the league. So it was a bit, but it was the whole on Twitter and everything. Everyone's trying to find out what the price are you accepting, sort of thing, that I found quite funny, because like everybody was so varied on where they were accepting it, and I seen some amounts that I'm going, just whatever you're smoking, just stop now, because you're not getting that for a championship player that is 31 years old with a year on his deal. But I think I came to it and going, if they actually seriously came in with something over 200 grand, that the club would have had to seriously consider it and go, right, what could we have done at this sort of point in terms of the guy's at 31, a year left in his deal. Then it's the case of, can we replace somebody of that quality with the amount of money that you're getting? That's what you've got to sort of match up. But I kind of never thought that he was going to leave, because at the end of the day, Dylan's came out many times in the last 2 years especially and says that he's never enjoyed his career as much as he has till now, and that his whole family situation is as good as it's ever been, and that he's just enjoying his life. And he's now got the community coaching as well, which him and Sean Burns seem to absolutely love doing that as well. So he possibly would have had to give that up as well if he was going to move on. But I think me and Ali spoke about it last week. If in our job somebody came in and offered you 4 times more to go to like a rival club, for me a rival golf club, I'm sorry, but if they're offering me 4 times more than my wage, I'll see you later. Like that. That's just the way that it's going to work for a lot of people. But I think we've probably said to Dylan that we would give him a significant probably amount more than what he was on now, but nothing that we then can't afford to do as well. So it's a sort of happy medium, and I think Dylan would have been more than happy to quickly get it done, as he says that it was. And he's also just came off he's arguably his best ever season, even though he is 31. So I do hope that we get at least another 2 solid years out of Dylan Easton, and then that's probably him going down as a club legend if we do get that out of him as well.
Yeah, this is where I don't even slightly buy this kind of 4D chess, Neil Lennon strategic genius type theory, where it's like, because I kind of get the sort of like, well, they're trying to kind of throw our summer a little bit, which partly is a bit like, hey, come on, you have bigger things to worry about than like one of your rivals, you know what I mean? Like there's 9 other teams in the division, unless you're going to phone up every one of them. phone up Airdrie, try to work out like who are we going to try and big dog in the Airdrie squad. But it would be much more believable if they had a very settled squad already. They don't, they've got other things to worry about. Like try and actually get some players in. Just a very like the kind of like the best case scenario for Dunfermline is that after some toing and froing, we're like, okay, fine, we will sell you Dylan Easton for a price which is massively inflated over and above his market value, which only applies to them. Because to take an example, if Dundee, right, take Dundee, if they'd decided that they wanted Dylan Easton this summer, we'd have still been like, yeah, look, we need a decent amount of money. We're not happy to let him go. But the pure fact it was Dunfermline alone, to make it happen, you're attaching like a reputational damage premium.
Yep.
Where the Rovers would have basically had to come out and go, look, yes, we're selling one of our very best players to Dunfermline, but by the way, look at all this money. And it would have had to have been enough that we all went, yeah, fair enough. Actually, yeah, I see what you mean. So I say the best case scenario is that Dunfermline end up with him, and he's a very, very good player, but that they've massively overpaid for him. That's their best case scenario. Everything else is just worse than that, and that what they've ended up with is like, oh no, you've forced us into having one of our very best players for another 3 years. Like, oh, you pesky guys. Like, I mean, yeah, so we've probably had to bump his wages a little bit to get him to sign a contract extension. Like, fine, that's what that money is for. Is to pay the best players their market value so that you can have them. Like, good. That's what I want my wage budget on, is really good football players. And I think they're running before they can walk. If you know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of thing that, as I say, if you'd already signed 4 or 5 players from somewhere else who were, for this level, superstars. So there was talk that they were in for, like Declan Gallagher probably doesn't fall into that category. There were some wild rumours, including a couple that were told to me as like kind of factual, of big players, guys who've played for Scotland, that Dunfermline had asked about. Now, see if you pull off 3 or 4 of those, and it's kind of known that, yeah, you've successfully recruited some really big names, and you're chucking some really big money about, then you could go to your local rivals and be like, right, we're actually going to throw some money at you as well. And it feels more realistic. And it's like, but if you want to try and big dog someone, you need to make sure you're a big dog, first of all. And I just don't think they are. I just don't think they're in that place.
You would also think a poker player would be good at that.
Yeah, it's so... It's a bit like it's a bit like, just digging out Dunfermline now, but it's a bit like signing Victor Wanyama, where like you've had a really shite January window where all you've really done is bring in a load of loan players with double-barreled names who kind of tie their own bootlaces, and then you're like, now we're going to get a marquee signing. Like, just try and get someone who can actually play left back. Like, I say, it's running before you can walk. It's trying to do stunts when you've not done the basics yet. And obviously, we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll have a good season, who knows. But this kind of stuff, this messing about... Well, they've certainly not managed to spend it yet. They seem, sounds like they do. Sounds like they're trying really hard. And yeah, nobody wants it.
But I don't, like, if you listen to the way they talk about they're talking about, trying to build a player trading model and, similar to what maybe Hearts are doing, where they're using like analytics. And the idea is to get a hidden gem that, has been forgotten about, and he's sitting in some weird, like, the Belgian third division or something like that, and bring him in for nothing, have him for a year, and then sell him on for £500,000 to someone. Dylan Easton doesn't fit into that. Dylan Easton's very much you're going to pay up front for him, you're going to get a couple of years out of him, and if you are where you want to be in 2-3 years' time, which is, challenging for Europe, which was funny, then Dylan Easton's not going to be playing for you, and you're not going to be selling him. So it doesn't fit if you are looking at that kind of trading model of trying to become a sustainable football club. It's not. It was very much just a daft. I don't think they got anywhere near a level they thought we were actually going to take. I don't know if they're just looking to unsettle him or whatever. And I think Dylan Easton, as Scott mentioned, Dylan Easton's happier now than he ever has been. He's mentioned it many times in interviews. I think, yes, he had to think about it because it's silly money and he's got kids and a mortgage and what have you. But I don't know if he'd be willing to risk throwing all that away and going to a club which may or may not turn out to be a basket case. Please let it be one. Then, and who knows what happens. So.
Well, they've got a competitive game in 6 days, and right now Dennis Mehmet's their only goalkeeper. So, seems to be going to plan as far as I'm concerned.
German Mozambique guy that'll...
Player trading model that involves signing the guys that James Bord's Bulgarian team don't want anymore. Cool. Anyway, let's not get dragged into that any more than we already have done.
No.
Until we've got a game against them, and then we'll bring it all back up again. Just to kind of round off the events of the last couple of weeks, though, we did also have the final game of pre-season yesterday at the Falkirk Stadium. Falkirk in the end winning 4-2. Rovers goals coming from Lewis Vaughan and Jordan Doherty. This was, I think, about as unfriendly a friendly as you'll get. My new favourite player, Paul McMullan, setting the tone 2 minutes in, just booting somebody over, which is always good to see. Ali, did you enjoy this one over the piece?
I did. Thought it was probably one of the more entertaining pre-season friendlies that you'll be at. Plenty of goals, bit of stealing it. Definitely a bigger test than the first two anyway. Even though Falkirk are a bit of a known quantity, they haven't added that many players to their squad, but Brian Graham's a decent enough signing up top. So I thought it was a really good test, especially for the likes of Rowe at right back. We were saying he looked comfortable enough, good enough in the first two friendlies. He got a much bigger test. Maybe had a couple of jitters, but I thought he actually came through it fairly well. I thought it was interesting that Robson sort of noted that the centre-backs were quite tired and leggy, having played sort of all three pre-season friendlies. I thought that maybe did show with some getting caught out with some of Falkirk's balls in behind. But no, it was a really good test, and I think it leaves me thinking, having come through 3 games, that we look like we're going in the right direction, but I think there's still a lot of work to do, both in terms of what the players have got and in terms of adding to it.
I think actually, in terms of booking your pre-season, it was actually quite a shrewd pick, because that's as close as you'll get to a kind of championship side without having to play someone you're going to play in the championship. And I don't mean that as dismissively as that sounds, but like all of the Falkirk players who played yesterday played in the championship last season, except for Scott Bain, who was possibly their worst player, incidentally. And obviously they were a very, very good championship. They were a title-winning championship side, so that's the standard you want to be at, effectively. So that's a good kind of barometer. Allan, what did you think to the game itself, and how it transpired?
Yeah, I mean, I did only see the highlights. But judging by everything I've read, comments I've read from people who were there, including Falkirk fans, I've all said it was a fairly even game. Very well contested game. Took our chances really well. Lovely finish by Lewis Vaughan for the first. what the hell Scott Bain was doing out there. I don't know. Did he think he was playing on the 5-a-side pitches at the side or something? I don't know. It was very funny, but a cracking finish by Lewis Vaughan. Again, continuing that theme of if we can get him scoring regularly, brilliant. Lovely header for Jordan Doherty, who, oh my God, how good is he, by the way? I'm sure we're going to go on to that at length at some point. What a player that man is. Basically, the only good thing Neil Collins did for us, plus the money, Cheers, Sack Republic. But some very leggy defending. I thought Rowe looked like he maybe got caught a wee bit for the first goal. But it was almost like Ross got in between Rowe and in the back three. Robson did kind of hint in his post-match that he's basically been running them into the ground, even though we had a game coming up. We're not going to do that in training in the normal run of the season, so you don't expect them to tire that much. So that I don't see that being a problem. Josh Gray didn't really cover himself in glory at the first 2 goals, really. But again, it's early days. He pulled off some really good saves. On the whole, another really good run out, a really good test. Very good for Robson to see guys like Rowe against that kind of level of player, because that's what he's going to come up against.
Yeah, I think it's
he's going to have Tom Thomas running at him at some point soon. So, to have a good championship winner running at him.
Yeah, because really with the first hour against Linlithgow, and then when he came on for the second half against Alloa, we hadn't really seen any defending out of J Rowe. Through no fault of his own, he hadn't really had to do much of it. There's a couple of points in the Alloa game where he recovered the ball really quite well, but it was interesting to see. It wasn't quite a kind of full sort of defensive display almost. Just the way that Falkirk were playing, they were kind of coming inside before they got to the kind of wing backs almost. They were really quite narrow. So a lot of it ended up, it was Jordan Doherty was doing the defending on that side. But I completely agree with you. Actually, what I wrote down, my notes for Jordan Doherty was like, man of the match for all of pre-season, almost. Like, he's impressed me more than anyone else. And obviously he's a known quantity. We had him last season, but I don't know. I don't know if he's getting better, if he's just more settled, or what it is. But the goal was really just the kind of the icing on the cake. I'm just really enjoying watching him at the moment. He's excellent. He's so good.
I'm starting to see what the Rowdies fans were on about on that kind of podcast they did when they said, we think he should be going to a better level than that. He is going to a better level than the Scottish Championship. Hopefully it's with us, because if we're not in the Premiership next season, he bloody will be, I think.
I think he's gonna really start being noticed by fans of other teams this season.
Yeah.
He arrived partway through last season. He'd never played in Scotland before. I think if you said today, if you asked most Championship fans about Jordan Doherty, they wouldn't have much of an impression of him. That'll change this season.
Yeah, I think we need
really
to
stand out.
Do work early doors to get his deal extended, because he's only got another. I think he joined on an 18-month deal, so he's only got a year on it. And if his performances are like that in league games early on in the season, bottom half Prem teams are going to come sniffing, I think. But I think he's at times he looks really comfortable both in defence and stepping forward. So I don't know. He's the best thing to come out of County Dublin since Guinness and Phil Lynott, I think.
I think that point about stepping out, I think, is really important, because especially when you play a back three, you're going to want at one point or another, you're probably looking for one of them to kind of step out and support the midfield and carry that ball forward, and he does not look out of place when he does it.
That's it. He's so comfortable.
For the second, for Rowe's goal against Alloa, that crossfield ball was beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, I believe you caught the highlights for this one. What were your main thoughts after that?
Yeah, couldn't catch it live, so I caught the highlights with Rave TV, and from what I kind of went in thinking it must have been a decent game, just going by the score at first, because I couldn't even follow the updates with me being out and about on Saturday. But no, I was fairly positive after watching the highlights package with it. I seen enough in terms of, again, what you said was true in terms of it's as good a team that you'll play that's not. I know they are a top flight club now, but as you say, the majority of their squad, or pretty much every single one of them, all were playing for them last season. So, like, yeah, it's as good as a championship sort of test as you'll get. So, and yeah, I mean, it is just great to see Lewis Vaughan back. I know we say every time that he gets out injured, it's great to see him back playing, but he's now actually looking like he's getting back up to 100%. He's enjoying himself and he's scoring goals. And a sort of hungry Lewis Vaughan is very dangerous for any other championship side, because as long as he stays fit for 90% of the season, he's a shoo-in for golden boot sort of talk, like every season, because he's that sort of player and he's that type of goal scorer. But the thing is, every season is, can you keep him fit or can he stay fit? So hopefully that he can for the majority of the season, but it's great to see him back, and I really liked the look of Paul McMullan as well. I know you guys had a laugh about the fact that he just got stuck in for the minute goal and just booted somebody, but I like the fact he was just constantly running about, causing a hassle, high press, which seems to be what Barry Robson is going after constantly. So that's probably why he sort of ticked the box and why we signed him. But no, I think he'll turn out to be a pretty good signing going off how he looks so far. And then
I totally forgot about him before I watched the highlights. I'm like, who the hell's number 18? Who's that guy? Oh, it's McMullan.
And then it was also great to see Jordan Doherty getting on the score sheet as well. Just that, I think last season he really, for me anyway, was a standout in terms of how consistent he was, and the fact that we said it at the time. I think it could have been very easy for him to be unsettled. The fact that he was signed by a manager that then left, and then completely different style of play, completely different manager that we bring in, but seem to fit in and just get on with it. And these are the sort of players that you want, somebody that's just gets on with their job and just sort of is happy to do a job for the team, which he seems to be, and adds quality as well. And I think we've seen from the Alloa game as well, he puts in a pretty decent cross when he's got the chance as well. So hopefully we can get maybe a couple of goals for Jordan Doherty this season as well, because I think that was all that was really missing for him that in that 6 months last season was, like, other than not scoring, he done everything else but that. And so I think he'll prove to be not like a new signing, but just a really good signing in terms of somebody that's going to actually produce week in, week out.
I just want a quick word for the referee in this one, because I didn't have an easy afternoon, and I think it's like you're rocking up for a pre-season friendly. I imagine pre-season for referees is pretty tough. Well, you've been on the cans for a couple of months or whatever, and you're like, right, I just need to get back up to speed. But I've got a couple of friendlies under my belt. I'm not going to be anything to worry about. I don't need to bother booking anybody. We'll just keep it calm. And the players were determined to not let them do that. Because you could see it really early, like the McMullan one, I think in a league game, that's sort of quite close to a yellow card. And there's a couple other, like, really quite, like, cynical, and not necessarily in, like, a nasty way, but there was a point where the Rovers tried to take a free kick, and Aidan Nisbet just booted the ball away. And again, it was like, in a league game, you'd get booked for that. And you could just see the referee getting more and more like, come on, I am trying to, like, play by friendly rules, and you guys are actively ruining this game. And it was once Easton and Spencer kind of squared up to one another, and you could see he's so exasperated. He was like, right, I'm going to have to start booking people. And then I think after that, I think he almost kind of struggled to get his head right on what he was doing, because I think he went back to, in his own mind, I think he went back to, right, that's fine. I've given a booking each. Everybody will be sensible now. And they just didn't. It's just like kept going on. He ended up with a couple other bookings. There's the Josh Ray coming flying out of his goal and melting Ethan Ross. Yeah. Only thing on this, I'm not in the business of saying things just to be controversial or contrary. But everybody has said that this is very clearly a red card. He's only given a yellow because it's a friendly. I'm not so sure. I think Ethan Ross, his touch isn't particularly heavy, but I think he's pretty much put the ball to, I'm guessing it's Callum Fordyce, I haven't watched it back.
Paul Hanlon.
I think
You'd say the same thing.
I think it might just be enough that's possibly, he's just taken it far enough away for it to only be a yellow card. But then the other thing, just a final point on the referee, and it was nice because I had completely forgotten about this, and it's good to see it in a friendly first so you remember it's a thing. New rule for this season, which is they've decided to actually do something about goalkeepers holding on the ball for too long. I think it's supposed to be 8 seconds. It basically doesn't matter. It's going to be arbitrary and it's going to be a response to crowd pressure anyway. But Josh Ray at 4-2 down, penalised for time wasting. But where it used to be an indirect free kick, it is now a corner. And I think that the general idea with that is I think even referees felt that, even an indirect free kick, 6 yards out or 8 yards out, was too much of a punishment. And that corner is not quite as severe, and so they're maybe more likely to kind of enforce that. But I think, as is always the case with new rules, there's going to be hell to pay. A couple of goalkeepers are going to fall foul of that in the first couple of weeks of competitive games. So hopefully, Josh Ray's learned a lesson, and we don't see that. But it was a good game. I enjoyed it. Just there was that little bit more kind of needle. There was a little bit more in it. I don't think either team was at their kind of free flowing best as a result, but it was good to see. And as I say, I get the feeling that Barry Robson was very much treating it like a league game. Put his strongest 11 out, played them for 80 minutes before he made any changes. So, yes, I suspect we'll see a fairly similar side out next week. But obviously, we'll cover that in full.
I find it quite funny, sorry, just on the when Spencer scored to make it 3-2. If you just clipped that bit after, like 2 seconds after the ball hits the back of the net, that sums up Barry Robson's interview where he says the defenders were tired. So you had 6 players in that clip, all bent over, hands on their knees, absolutely blown at their arse. And it was the whole back three, Bruni, and I think it was Matthews as well. There was just, all of them looked like they were absolutely done by that point, and you were just like, yeah, you could tell that they've clearly been played too much, but at the same time, we're not running with a massive squad either, so it's kind of good to get everybody minutes. But I think he said it as well in his interview that he's looking to dial back training sort of more to a more regular season sort of week coming into this week, because he's now worked them so hard for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Right, just 2 quick questions, and then I think we'll finish up for tonight. First one, Allan, the first 2 friendlies we saw appearances from a trialist. We saw Ethan Drysdale, the former Hearts left back, came off the bench against Lithgow and started against Allan. I think I'm right in saying. Didn't come off the bench against Falkirk. Do you suspect that's the last we've seen of him? And is that something you're particularly animated by?
It'll either be that or Robson's seen enough of him and wanted. But then why would you be looking at Mullen and that? Like, you almost think, well, okay, we'll see how Mullen does at left wing back at that kind of level. But if you were signing in Drysdale, would you bother doing that? I think you're probably right. I think it probably does suggest we're gonna look elsewhere. I don't feel particularly disappointed to lose out on him, but I also wouldn't have been overly annoyed if we'd signed him either. If you know what I mean, it was very much he looked like he might be okay. He's only 19. I suppose that's one thing. He is still a young lad. He's got a chance to make it, but I don't know how good he is. I think that's the thing. I genuinely don't know from the Linlithgow game and the Alloa game how good he is. I would suggest Barry Robson's probably seen enough of him to know whether he's going to sign him or not without playing him against Falkirk. But
So just one other thing, just on the subject of new rules from a minute ago, we do have a slight change to the League Cup this season, so you can actually play trialists in the group stage. So it's not necessarily that we've seen the last of them. You could actually still feature in that. But I don't know. We'll see.
Just to make it seem even more like pre-season games.
Aye, exactly. Ali, for you, well, you can give me your thoughts on Ethan Drysdale, and then more broadly than that. Well, I mean, if we're allowed to use trialists in the group stage, would you be looking for any particular position for next weekend to maybe have a look at somebody? Where would your next sort of priority for recruitment be?
So, on Ethan Drysdale, I'm pretty much happy to defer to Barry Robson's judgment on that one. He was fine. He didn't do anything to particularly wow me. Also, didn't do too much wrong. We probably do need left-sided cover. I know we were talking about potentially having like either Mullen or maybe even playing like Gibson in that left wing back position, but like Stevenson is an absolute trooper, played pretty much every game last year, but we can't bank on that. We do need somebody in. So if he sticks around, fine. I'd like to get, in terms of the squad, I think we need centre back cover. We've got 3 good centre backs, but 2 of them are getting on a wee bit. And there's a lot of minutes to cover this season. And I still think we might need another forward in, because we've got a wee bit of variety with Vaughan, Hamilton and Smith coming back, but there's also a lot of injuries records there. And if even one of them picks up another injury, suddenly you're looking light. So I'd like us to maybe run the rule over another striker as well.
Yeah, Scott, same question to you. Would you be looking for reinforcements if there's still room in the budget?
Yeah, I'm not too dissimilar to what Ali's just said. I would really like us to go and sign funnily enough, a Dylan Corr sort of player in terms of quite early 20s, got a bit of pace, something different, because we've got 3 centre-halves right now who are all very good championship centre-halves, but Doherty's got a wee bit of pace, the other 2 don't really have that much pace, and I fear it against any team that's got pace that can run in behind, how we then deal with that. So that's, if we could get a sort of young 20-year-old that can learn off of somebody like Paul Hanlon, but then be chucked in maybe 10 games a season or something when we need them, that would be ideal. I also think a striker it's probably looking likely that we might look into the loan market for a striker. I don't know if we'll actually go for a permanent striker. Just the fact we've got 3 on our books now that are all permanent players. I know that Smithy's actually, is it not till January his deal, or is it a 1-year deal did he get?
I think it was only described as a short-term deal, which I would take to mean January.
I'm
but
not sure, but anyway, again, the fact that we've got the whole, we'll need to see how he is anyway. So as it currently stands, we're going into the league season with 2 strikers. So I definitely think even if it's a loan signing, it's something I would like to go and try and get. I'm not sure, I've not really heard a lot of folk talk about it, but we've not really filled a Sam Stanton sort of player in the squad yet. I think I would quite like to see if there's the possibility of getting somebody similar to that sort of box-to-box, but also can play number 10. I know that Dylan Easton likes to cut inside and play that sort of role. Paul McMullan can possibly play that role as well, but I'd quite like them to play their sort of wider positions and then maybe get... I know that Kai Montague's there, but he's still so young and inexperienced. Again, I would like to have him sort of coming on for 20 minutes again for this season anyway, and then getting more comfortable, more experience. Whereas if you can go and get somebody that's maybe in the prime of their career, sort of mid to late 20s, that's a sort of position I would look at getting as well.
Yeah, definitely. Very much an easier said than done, but you're absolutely right. We don't have that like number 8 who'll play there but do an 8's job, as opposed to, as you say, McMullan or Easton who'll play in the same place as a kind of a 10. It's really tricky with the defence because it's the same as you say for the 3 centre halves and for Stevenson at left wing back, which is basically, in an ideal world, you'd be quite happy without no question at all. You'd have those 4 players play every single minute. Like, there's no point where you're like, oh, actually, I'm, there's no expectation that you're going to get a better player than those 4, I suppose. So really, what you're recruiting for is like an absolute backup. It's one of the reasons why, I think it's one of the reasons why he left ultimately, and rightly so if he wants to play football. But like, why Liam Dick was so good for us, because he was a great squad option to cover both positions effectively, cover left back and cover centre half. But it's quite a tricky sell to bring in someone new, where you basically, because you go sign a left wing back, and they know fine well that all going well for everyone else, Lewis Stevenson will play every minute. They're only going to play if he's injured or if he's suspended. And it's the same with Hanlon, Fordyce and Doherty. We'd all be cock-a-hoop if we could get them for every minute of the league season. So you're really looking at somebody who is, as you say, Scott, maybe 20-year-old maximum, who'll come in and basically be happy to be a backup. But it's very tricky to find someone who is simultaneously happy to come in as a backup, but also be good enough to be able to contribute when you do need them in the inevitable points when they do have to play. So, definitely tricky, definitely. But it's quite nice to be in this position. Not played a competitive game yet, and actually looking at going, well, we could do with another one of those guys, or we could do with someone here, as opposed to like, we do not have any right backs and haven't for 18 months, where, we've been before in, the middle of August. So, it's not been... we went into this summer in a very strong position. A really quite a settled squad in comparison to both previous Rover seasons and other teams in the division.
I don't know how he played on Saturday, but I thought against Alloa in particular that Scott Brown was getting forward a lot more and kind of trying to fill that number 8 role, hitting shots, kind of linking with the front players. I don't know if that's something that Robson's trying to get him to do more, because you've got the back 3. So with the back 3 and Matthews sitting back, you don't necessarily need Scott Brown as another kind of defending midfielder. It gives him a bit more rein to go forward, and he's got that. He's not the same type of player as Stanton, but he can fill a similar role in terms of being that link from back to front.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see what happens against Elgin, because you've got that.
Yeah.
Barry Robson basically played the same, as much as he could, the same team in the same system in every one of our league games at the back end of last season, but playing a League 2 side in the League Cup is a kind of different proposition. So it'll be interesting to see what he does differently, and there will be plenty of conversation on that very topic later in the week, I imagine on Thursday night. But I think we'll leave that there for tonight. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Your chance to listen to this before the open day at Starks Park begins at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Chances are pretty slim, but fair play if you're up early and you are listening to this before you squeeze that in. If not, you'll have already seen the big reveal for the new away kit, so you know more than we do. But that's the last kind of big pre-season event, I suppose, before the real stuff does start again. To an extent, with the League Cup group stage next Saturday. As I've already said, we will be back later in the week with a full preview of that trip to Elgin, and we'll speak to you again then. Thank you, and goodbye.